why do I feel lonely in a room full of people? Like, why do I feel lonely when I supposedly have all these friends? And why do I feel lonely in even my marriage? I just felt lonely. It's because I wasn't allowing anyone to know me. And because I wasn't being known, who they were engaging with was just an avatar. It wasn't even a real person. And so there was no
Mm,
connection happening. And so as I began to kind of unearth that and see like why I felt like I needed to hide and why I needed to create the space between us is really when I was able to really start finding out who I was. And I did that through, really encountering Jesus face to face. And he taught me who I was and let me know
mm.
that I was okay.
You know, Patrice's playlist, well, it's good listening. Mm.
Here we are. It is time for another conversation. I am so glad that you are joining me on this season 4 of Heal, Move, and Dream is our theme for this season. And again, I didn't know going into this conversation what would be highlighted from the three: heal, move, or dream. But there's one that stands out, and I think you're going to get it before I kind of announce it towards the end. Fun fact, I really knew nothing of my guest, and I rarely do that here on this space. But she connected with me on Instagram. I saw that we had a mutual friend, and she's doing some inner healing work that I thought was really interesting. But I was like, okay, let's find out about her and her story. And her business partner and her coaching partner have such a passion for women and seeing women healed and seeing them really encounter the love of God, the love of Christ, in some really profound ways. And I'm going to say some out of the box ways. And so I'm already going to preface, we kind of hit a point in the conversation where she and I kind of disagree a little bit about certain things. And maybe you disagree with me, maybe you disagree with her. But I also want us to get used to being in conversations where we're not all necessarily talking the same or thinking exactly the same. And how might you extend grace and compassion in those types of conversations? I know that, culture loves division and loves sort of that, but I really want us to be in a space, and especially when we're talking with other believers that might not have the same sort of lens or view or perspective that we do. However, there can still be some really great wisdom nuggets for you to pull from. And so I pray that in this conversation, you pull the nuggets that you need, that God has for you, and also maybe gives you some things to think about, and maybe just marinate, or as the kids say, do they still say this? But let it cook a little bit. I don't know. And so again, this is my very first conversation, my very first meeting with my new friend from Instagram, who is also a coach as well, Shanna Fougerousse. What an incredible last name. Like, I think it's one of my favorite last names to say ever. So Shanna Fougerousse. All right. I'll see you on the other side of this conversation. Bye. I have someone with me that I've not actually ever met before in person. That's what we do. And uh Shauna, how did we meet? We'll let you start there.
So we met through Instagram. I reached out to you, thought that you seemed like a really cool person that I wanted to connect with, and we just kind of began a conversation that way. Very awkward for me because I don't usually do that, but I'm in this new space of reaching out and letting people get to know me. And so sometimes you got to make the first move. And so that's
Mm.
kind of how we met, how we connected.
Oh, see, you already started with something that just kind of piqued my interest, like letting people get to know you. Like, how did you say that again? Can you say that one more time? That was so
Oh
good.
goodness. I almost never remember exactly what I say,
Same.
but
Me too.
but I think pretty much where I'm at is that I have, and we'll get to more of my story, of course, later, but throughout the duration of my life, I've been very comfortable being a chameleon in the room and mirroring what other people need. And so I haven't always allowed myself to be known. And I'm in a season where it's okay to do that now. I feel safe and I think it begins with like this knowing who I am and loving who I am and not wanting to change it or needing to be like someone else to be valuable. So I'm stepping into this new season and have been for a little while, but part of that was with the mission driven business that I have is to let people know who I am um and there's not a whole lot of spaces physically to move into this, so social media feels like the right place to do it, and you can actually be a little particular about who you connect with on social media, and so that's pretty nice as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had another conversation, what my audience will hear before this particular episode, with someone else, and we started to talk about making friendships as an adult. And your
And
face
how hard
already.
it is.
Thank,
And like, how do we do it? And it just feels awkward.
thank you. And so
Yes.
I felt like Holy Spirit gave us some really beautiful nuggets in that conversation, but it's something that's at the forefront of my heart in this season because I've been really wrestling with the Lord, just saying, I'm a single gal. I've been single for like 84 years. Okay, not 84 years, everyone, but we we
Well, you
get
look
it.
amazing.
Thank you. And my wrestle point, my pain point with the Lord, for the past, gosh, I mean, especially in the last few years, but I'd say the last 20 has just been being single, but specifically in the last, I think, few years, especially after 2020, right, when the world sort of shut down, was this sense of loneliness. And I was like, Lord, I can actually be okay with like being single if that's what you have for me, like for the rest of my journey on earth. That's not preferred. That's not what I thought I signed up for at all. But it's like what I can't get over is feeling lonely. And I've been experiencing these pockets though of deep community. And it's been in those spaces where I've had to push back, feeling like a victim. And I feel like it's so easy to kind of fall into that, even as an adult, because you're just kind of like, number one, how do I make friends? It's super awkward. But then it's like I had to allow myself to be known. And so you were sharing again, like, you used to be sort of a chameleon, and we can kind of go a little bit into your story because I'm very curious, like, what do you mean by that? I feel like already a lot of my audience that comes from, either church hurt, faith circles, etc., kind of already know what you're talking about, but I really would love to know some specifics in your story. But I feel like already you're giving us a key of how to make connections, not just if we're in business, not just if we are pursuing a God, dream, but in this sort of day to day, like connecting with people. So, can you kind of expound a little bit more on what it was like to be a chameleon? Where did that come from? You can get as specific or non-specific as you want regarding your story.
Yeah, sure. So I did not grow up in the church and grew up in a very dysfunctional household. I was the oldest of four, and we were a blended family. So my mom had remarried, and two of the siblings were half siblings. And so my youngest was born probably when I was 9 to 10 years old. And I went through life really not feeling like I was enough. And a lot of that connected to that dad hurt, like didn't have a dad. And then the father figure that was in my life had his own kids. And so that I didn't really have a place. And and so I think for most of my life, I was just looking for a place. I was looking for someone to say, hey, you belong here. Like, this is who you are. Because I didn't get that identity piece from a father figure. And of course, I didn't know the Lord. So I didn't have any kind of understanding of like who I was and what I was supposed to be. And so I began to like just emulate other people. And that's where that kind of chameleon thing came into place, where I realized that I would get I would be seen as valuable if I mirrored what people needed. And so I got really good at that. And it was a really safe place for me to be in relationships. But you talk about that lonely piece. Oh my goodness, was I lonely? And I probably didn't realize I was lonely till I got, further into adulthood because I had numbed feelings for so long. And I did that through addictions of all sorts. And so that was like a coping mechanism that kept me moving what I thought forward, but really just creating a lot of carnage in my life. But I think that piece of the chameleon was one of those things as I began my healing journey was probably one of the last things to break because I didn't know it was a problem, like, until I felt that loneliness that which made me kind of go inside and discover, like, why do I feel lonely in a room full of people? Like, why do I feel lonely when I supposedly have all these friends? And why do I feel lonely in even my marriage? I just felt lonely. It's because I wasn't allowing anyone to know me. And because I wasn't being known, who they were engaging with was just an avatar. It wasn't even a real person. And so there was no
Mm,
connection happening. And so as I began to kind of unearth that and see like why I felt like I needed to hide and why I needed to create the space between us is really when I was able to really start finding out who I was. And I did that through, really encountering Jesus face to face. And he taught me who I was and let me know
mm,
that I was okay. And really began to like pull up some of this greatness that was in me that honestly other people had criticized, like the boldness and the assertiveness and things that I thought were like probably bad characteristics, um, because I realized like people like you to be agreeable. They don't always like you to bring conflict. They don't always like you. And so I I would think that that was like a thing that was negative. But Jesus began to show me like that was how he created me and how
mm,
to then move in that with grace and love instead of feeling like it was a divisive thing.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. There are so many beautiful things that you shared there. And again, this whole allowing yourself to be known. I'm curious, how did Jesus encounter you? Because it seems like it was pretty like life altering, like completely for you.
For sure. And there were stages of it because I didn't feel safe being known. So I first, I think Jesus first encountered me, or I even knew he was there. I was 27 and had a radical experience at a Baptist church of all things. And it was a time where in, I would say I was in a deep cycle of hurt and pain and really just like nothing else working. Like, I'm going to go and I'm just going to share everything with this minister and hopefully they're going to make it all better. Um, and I had a tangible experience with Jesus that was just radically different. And I knew then that he was real. I didn't really come into a deep, intimate relationship with him until probably my mid 30s. And as I began this relationship, I learned like how he spoke to me and how he does speak to me. And so that began this conversation to where I slowly let him in. I mean, of course, all I ever knew was to show up the way somebody I thought needed me to. So at the
Mm,
beginning of our relationship, that's kind of how I showed up with him, like how I thought he needed me to be, how I heard, someone preaching about him and I was really scared to be seen by him because I had this belief system that I wasn't really good enough. So throughout that journey, and it took a while and there was like a bunch of turns, but I think when my heart began to truly open to him was when I really learned how to engage with him face to face.
mm,
And instead of just being in this space of prayer where it felt like it was a two-dimensional thing where I would, you know, share my heart and, let him speak to me, but not really like see him or experience him in a way that like my whole body could jump into and experience. But when I began the journey of like stepping into this place where I could, and I used my imagination when I first started this because I needed to activate it so then I could step into this place of vision and um dimensional, kingdom reality. And so as I began to do that, kind of like toe deep in the water and then foot in the water and then get knee deep in the water, then he just began to like love me in a place that I was. And my heart began to see that there was no condemnation in him, even though like my head knew that, my heart didn't. Um, because honestly, the God that I heard about at church was so bipolar, it was scary. You know, like, yeah, I hear he's all about love, but like there's this piece of justice that's super scary to me. And, a lot of the things that people talked about that, God hated were things that I did, in my past life. And so I felt like I owed a lot of penance, like I needed to serve and I needed to do all of these things to kind of earn my right into the kingdom. But all of that kind of got dismantled. And it's crazy. I didn't even know I thought these things. Like I just was doing all the things that I knew to do, was reading the Bible. I mean, I read the Bible for 10 years in a row, front to back, thinking that, okay, I'm going to get something in here and I'm going to begin to know this God. And none of that really created a relationship. I mean, it gave me a lot
Mm,
of insight. It gave me a lot of like
mm,
nuggets. It taught me things about history,
mm,
but it didn't bring me a lot of relationship, to be honest.
mhm,
And I found that encountering God face to face, um, in Jesus encounters, that I have grown immensely. And that's what's allowed me into the space where I can even have this conversation with you, and I would
mhm.
have I would have never reached out to you, you know, 5 years ago. This
I'm
would
so
never have
glad you
happened.
did. I'm so glad you did. For those that are listening already and they're like, man, she sounds so normal. And she's talking about Jesus encounters. Like, what is that? Like, what does that mean for you when you say Jesus encounters for someone who's never experienced that? Like, for you, and you can give one example, but something
Yeah.
that kind of they can sink their teeth into. Because again, eh, yeah, I think people have many different ideas and have seen maybe different expressions of that. But for you, what does that mean?
Yeah, so for me it's realizing that Jesus is always with me. He's
Mm,
always wanting to speak to me. He's always in the space where he has time for me. And so all I need to do is just, you know, calm myself down. And the way that I do that is a lot of times with breathing. I know that you do a lot of breathing things with
mm,
somatic healing,
yeah.
and getting myself in a place of calm and rest, because what I used to do is try to encounter him in striving, like praying enough and like
Mm,
wanting him to show up.
okay.
But like I couldn't experience him in striving, but I can only experience him in rest, because that's the
Ooh.
place that he wants me to enter into the space with him, is like from rest, from a place of like, I'm just sitting here in my space and then I turn my focus to him. I just say, hey, I see you there. Even if I visually don't see him, I know he's there. And so I'm
Mm,
activating something with faith there.
mm,
And in the beginning, I had people that would kind of walk me through it. That's how I began um this journey. Now it's way easier. I mean, in a second, I can just be in this space with him, and we can be
mm,
in a place, and or we can, I can just feel his presence, because I'm a feeler and a knower. That's kind of the way that I engage with him.
mhm.
But oftentimes I will see things in my mind's eye and I can engage with him that way. But I can remember early on, one of my encounters was, so we were doing like a group encounter, and it's where everybody kind of like chimes in on what they're seeing. And so you're
Mm,
creating this beautiful like tapestry of the whole experience. And so there was this castle with this banquet table, and everybody that was engaging in it seemed to be at the banquet talking about all the things at the banquet was on the table, and who was there serving and what everything looked like. And I'm stuck outside and I'm seeing like this bridge
Oh,
from like ground over water to the castle. So like I'm nowhere
yeah.
near the castle. But I'm like stuck on this bridge and I can't move. I'm like
Wow.
paralyzed
Hmm.
with something. And I mean, I believe it was like a fear of something.
Mm.
And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I guess this is like, I guess this isn't for me, and I'm having this interaction with myself. And of course,
Mm.
there's the negative self-talk that comes. And all of a sudden I feel this like presence behind me and a hand on my shoulder. And I remember looking up and it was Jesus. And Jesus had come to be with me on the bridge and began a conversation of, it's okay to be out here. There's nothing wrong with you. And I will be wherever you are. I don't need you to come to where I am. I'm always going to come to where you are. And you're not a problem for me. You're not too much. You're worth
Mm.
my time. You're like just this whole thing of just valuing me, even in this place where like I'm stuck on a bridge. Like there's a
Oof.
party in the castle that you're supposed to be at. Like everybody's in there like wanting to
Mm.
be with you. And he's like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be right here with you.
Mm.
And it's encountering him that way that literally just changes a belief system in a moment because he found value in me on a bridge where I was stuck and broken and didn't feel like I had any value and wasn't seeing the things everyone else was seeing. And there was just something so intimate and special about that it really began this process of like wanting to be with him because
Mm.
like he was the safest place I'd ever experienced in my whole life.
Ooh.
Yeah. And when you experience that, girl, like
Mm.
you just want more of that.
Yeah. The safest place you've ever experienced in your whole life. Yeah, you got me taking church notes. It's happening, everyone. If you're seeing this on video, the church notes have begun. Um, I love that you said where what Jesus, what you felt from that experience was that like you're worth his time, like him saying to you, like, you're worth my time. I mean, I feel like that's such a healing word for someone that's listening to this right now. Like, you're worth his time. I also love that you said earlier before you preface this full story that he always has time for me. Like he always has time for me. And this whole idea of like encountering Jesus in the space of rest and not in rushing or striving, which again, I feel like, depending on like our family of origin and like cultural things, we feel very familiar, like it feels really comfortable to strive and to earn. And it's really hard in these instances to like know that we're loved by just being us, like that there's already worth placed on us and being us and that we're worth it. And so yeah, as you're sharing that, like I feel that thing. And it's really beautiful. It's a reminder I feel like that I need even in this moment. I love that you're just like I can be anywhere and just take that beat and he's here. He's got time for us in this moment. Whoo. Okay.
And I would say, like, for me, the reason I can do that way is because I practiced it for so long and it's become a way
Mhm.
of life for me.
Mhm.
And it does help keep me in. I mean, there's a lot of frequency out there and there's a lot of energy that's not always helping us. It's inundating us with information, information, information. So that's
Mhm.
easy to get overwhelmed. It's easily to get confused. It's easy to get
Mm.
angry at certain situations. But I found that like having that practice, not that I don't ever go there, but I don't stay there. I'm
Yeah.
quickly able to move out of it because I realize that, wait a second, the kingdom is in me. Jesus has time for me. He's always with me. This
Mm.
doesn't have to aggravate me. This doesn't have to
Mm.
create space within me. I
Mm.
can easily just go into the space and then move with that like alignment with him. Like, what do you see here, Lord? What are you
Mhm.
trying to show me? And like
Mhm.
move with power instead of moving with like this primal instinct of needing to protect myself, which is the way that I
Mm.
lived my whole life. So
Mm.
it's very different for me, but
Mhm.
it's because I've practiced it. And so
Mhm.
it's become a part of like who I am.
Yeah, I love that you referenced primal instinct. in that, because I think again, we feel that, as humans, that primal instinct, but the practice of, which reminds me of, oh gosh, the book, like Practicing the Presence. I think it's by Brother Lawrence. I'll have to leave it in the show notes as a reference as well. But it does take practice.
Mhm.
And I love that you kind of gave some really practical things, because I was just about to ask you, like, what does that look like? And then you just proceeded to like share, like, in the moment, like, this is your inner dialogue. And that I think that's kind of a key as well, that you have this inner dialogue and outer dialogue as well, but this inner dialogue with the Lord throughout your day, throughout wherever you are in the circles that you frequent. So I'm curious, what what is it that you get to do, the work that you get to do now, like knowing like your healing journey that you've gone through, it's vibrant within you, in your speech, in your conversation with me. But what's the work that you get to do, and why do you feel called to do this work?
Well, I think the calling came out of, so I've always been very justice driven,
Mm,
but justice in the sense of like right and wrong, like the world's justice.
mm, mhm,
And coming into like new awareness of kingdom truths, like God's justice looks very different. I mean, his justice is that everybody would know that they're loved and they would seem
mm,
like valuable. Like my whole process is what God wants for everyone. He wants everyone, no matter, where you started or where you're at right now. He wants you to
mhm,
know how much you're dearly loved, and that the Trinity created you with intention and purpose. Like you weren't
mm,
just accidentally put together. You weren't accidentally put into your family. You weren't haphazardly just
mm,
showing up at this time in life. Like everything about you is
mm,
purposeful.
mm,
And when we step into this place, like where we are powerful instead of living in our primal settings, and primal is just like these automatic default
mhm,
things that we do,
mhm,
but learning that like we have choices, and just because we show up in these certain ways because of these deep rooted belief systems that we have about ourselves, I had so many and I'm
mm,
still working some out, but as we get into this space where like we realize we have choice, like I'm not the way I am because God created me this way. A lot of times I show up the way that I am because of experiences that overlaid on top of my greatness. So there's so much greatness in us that's been untapped. And like for me, some of my greatness I thought were like negative qualities about myself. And so getting into this space where we can really help people, this is what I do, is
mm,
helping people step into a place where they can first begin to engage with themselves, because we all have these negative self-talk patterns that create division within ourselves where we don't connect all parts of us. And when I say all parts of us, like a simple example is like so often, you know, part of me wants to go do something, and the other part of me is like, nah, I just really want to stay home and Netflix and chill. Like, I
mhm,
just want to
yeah,
watch TV and just do
yeah,
nothing, eat popcorn. Um, but it's like seeing these parts of me as I am all good. There's
mm,
nothing in me that's bad. There's
mm,
nothing in me that's evil.
mm, mm,
But we find that we have created these patterns and beliefs that create, behaviors that we think are bad or evil.
mm,
And so then we beat ourselves up because why am I doing this thing that I know I shouldn't do, but I keep doing it? Well, because there's a part of you that keeps overriding the system and saying this is what we need to do to either survive or be happy or protect ourselves. Primal. That's a primal
mhm,
thing. And so
mhm,
helping people like engage with these parts of them and get them connected back to truth. I had a
mm,
lot of belief systems that I believed that I was XYZ when none of that was true. But things had happened, experiences had come into my life that created these mindsets or belief systems that were contrary to the truth about me, about others, about even God. Like I had a lot of belief systems about God based on what I experienced or saw from the people of God before I became a Christian.
Mhm.
So we all have these things that are written within us. And when when we engage with those parts of us, then we're able to truly engage with the heart of God, because God created every part of you and he wants to, you know, introduce you to all the parts of you that maybe we're afraid of or we've been told are bad. And, if you grew up in religion, you have a lot of belief systems, especially if you're a woman, about yourself that are not true. We
Mhm.
just do. We carry a lot of baggage. It's not
Mhm.
ours. And so what we do in our transformation sessions is really help people engage with themselves, to
Mhm.
learn that they're great, that there are amazing parts of them that they have not engaged with, and
Mm.
then get everybody introduced to Jesus. It's not a salvation issue, it's an intimacy issue. Like
Mm.
moving them into a space where they can engage with, the heart of God in a way that they feel safe to do that. And so
Mhm.
we teach you encounter.
Mhm. I like that you call it transformation sessions. That's powerful. You said something I think that will already start to ruffle any sort of religious belief that's not grounded in the love of God. But when you said, there's nothing evil in you, and because we're so sin conscious, we have, folks that have been following the Lord for 40 plus years, 5 plus years, 5 weeks, 5 months. And we know the value of the cross as well. So I'd love for you to kind of share more of when you're saying there's no evil in us and our makeup, how does that equate, or how does that work with sin nature, which that phrase, most folks that are churched know that very well.
So I don't actually agree that we have a sin nature. Um, so have you ever looked at a baby and thought, oh my gosh, this baby is so vile and evil?
Mm.
No, that baby has primal instincts. Like, I
Mm.
need to eat. I need to have somebody pay attention to me. I need to
Mhm.
survive.
Mhm.
And so we come into this world. Actually, if we come into this world straight from the Father,
Mm.
how does passing through our parent, our mom, then create this evilness in us? Like,
Mm.
we're not inherently evil. We're not inherently bad. Our
Mm.
experiences in life shape us. And that shaping of us either creates a need to protect ourselves, this primal need that then gets
Mm.
driven,
Mm.
or this need to be connected, which can also create some things. But if we grow up in a household where we're valued for who we are and we're allowed to have conversations
Mhm.
and to be curious and to engage with God in a way that works for our personality. Like if we're not given so many boundaries that it's boxed in, if we're
Mhm.
allowed to express ourselves and express ourselves with the Lord, then we won't battle a lot of these things that we battle as adults.
Mm.
So, I look at it like we come into this world perfect. We're created perfect. I mean, we were created by the Trinity with intention and purpose. There's
Mm.
nothing within you that is bad. But those things about us get perverted. And I mean, like, we look at them in the wrong way, like they get distorted. And then we end up with, through this, through this life of experiences, creating belief systems about certain things. And a belief system is just like, this is just the way it is. It doesn't take any thought. It's just an automatic response.
Mhm.
The brain doesn't want to have to work extra hard. So it's creating these belief systems so that it's just an automatic way that I show up or I engage with life. And so if you can see that, I mean, even in Psalms, like you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Like God speaks so much to our perfection in him. And it's not this perfection just in Jesus. We've always been in Jesus. So it's not like you're only
Mhm.
perfected as a Christian. Like as you accept him, you're perfect already. But it's realizing like
Mm.
that perfectness that's in you is like no other. So when I compare myself or try to be like someone else, what I'm doing is I'm diluting the perfection that's in me.
Mm,
And then I create this whole nother, like for me, I created all these different avatars. I wasn't walking in my perfection. And so I created a lot of separation from me. And sin, if you look it up in the Greek, I mean, the number one definition of sin is to be without share in, as like you're not aware of your inheritance. You have
mm,
lived a lesser life. It's like it's like being a part of this, you know, super rich, super wealthy family, but never knowing it and living like a pauper your whole life, like having to strive and having to work hard for everything that you get instead of realizing like you are already in perfection.
mm-hmm,
And salvation brings you into a place where then you get to know about it because
mm,
we were in a place where we weren't able to know about it because of the experiences and mindsets and collective belief systems that we were brought into.
mm,
But it's this when we're born again, we go through a new experience where we're born out of the Father's heart and we have all access to
mm,
things within the kingdom, all the goodness, everything, like blank check. Like there's
mm,
nothing withheld from you. You don't have to grow up necessarily to get it, but what you need to do is come into an understanding through relationship, and more is given, more is given, more is given,
mm,
because they don't want to overload you. So you have it all, nothing's withheld from you. But as we move into this relationship with them and we begin to understand ourselves and understand our purpose and understand who they are and what they have for us and how this partnership is supposed to run, like it's a co everything. And so we
mm,
co-create, we co-live, we you know, co-reign. That is our legacy in the kingdom.
mm-hmm,
So we move in this space as daughters and sons and ambassadors, and then eventually kings and queens and fathers and mothers. And like that's how we step into this place is like this is a family dynamic, and the family business is the kingdom, and we get it all. And there was never anything that needed to be cleaned out of us. It's just we needed to be revealed. Think about like Romans 8, where it talks about all creation is yearning and moaning for the sons of God to be revealed, not to be saved, to be revealed, is to reveal their true nature, the
interesting.
original intent.
Mm-hmm.
That is God's
Listen,
heart.
you are ruffling feathers right now. You already know, Shauna. You already know. You already know, girl. Because people are gonna be like, have you seen a 2-year-old? No, the baby might not be born with sin nature, but that 2-year-old who's saying no might
But
might
is that a
ruffle some.
sin nature or is that a primal nature?
And that's a great question. And I think for me, I veer on, and I love because we're in this season, and I was listening to another conversation. This is the season for our generation to do a lot of deconstructing, to reconstructing, to building
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And some of what's being deconstructed, I think, is absolutely necessary, 100%. Some I feel like is coming out of a lot of hurt and pain, but the rest, I'm like, I do trust the lordship of God. Like I trust his
Mhm.
lordship, but I think, as we talk about like, sin nature and theology and just how do we view the sacrifice of Jesus, these are weighty things, okay? Like these are weighty things, and we can't sort of extrapolate all of that in this conversation. But I think it's actually really important for um, the audience that's listening to this to kind of also hear other perspectives because they're not, Shauna, this is not sort of a perspective that majority of mainstream churchgoers would hear. And again, for me, I don't completely subscribe to where we don't have a sin nature. I know before there was sort of original sin, there was original goodness, and that's more along my stream. But I think for me, there's other things that I need a sort of revelation on before I can sort of completely co-sign on that, just because it makes me think of other aspects of Jesus and the cross and the violence of blood being mentioned, and all these other things that um, I may or may not get an answer on this side of heaven. But I think for me, I think really important in the conversation is how how do you view um, Jesus in all of this? And it seems like, as we started this conversation, you know, Jesus is the anchoring, king and everything and all of this. And I think that's really vital for my audience to hear that as well, even though they might just be like, well, I don't know about some of the other things. I got to research. And I think you already know that going into it because you've been in a variety of faith circles. And I think also we trust the leading of Holy Spirit to lead people to where they need to be. But what is your sort of, how do you view Jesus and all of this? And I think you kind of shared a little bit about it, kind of helping us be revealed. But I think it's interesting that, part of his title is sort of like saving one, rescuing one as well, and not just revealer. So I'm curious, though, from what you've experienced and what you know, which I think also is important to hear in this conversation, how does he fit in for you in all of this and
Yeah.
transformation?
I do want to first say, like, I am not here to try to convince anyone to believe what I believe. Like, that is not who I am. But I will say that on my journey, this is how I've encountered God for myself and the truths that have been revealed to me through relationship. That's what I would say about that. Now, the way that I view Jesus is he's God. He is God in the flesh. He is who reveals the heart of the Father to us. That, if we look at God, for me, I had this, like I said earlier, like I had this like vision of this two-faced God, like he's this way sometimes and he's this way sometimes. And that was really confusing for me. And for me, like through the process of encountering Jesus, who is God, who is ultimately everything. I mean, he's the word become flesh. He's the essence of everything. Nothing was created that wasn't created through him. He holds everything together. I mean, Jesus is everything. I mean, he just is. And what I love so much about who Jesus is that he chose to come into this dimension of reality, this three-dimension reality, and put skin on and reveal the heart of a God that we had no idea existed. And you can read the Old Testament. I mean, I feel like a lot of the Old Testament is how people interpreted God, but not exactly how God is. And Jesus showed us who and how God is, how he interacts with people, how he loves, how he brings truth, how he brings justice. Like Jesus is the essence of all love and truth embodied together in justice. And we sometimes can't wrap our brain around it because it just doesn't even make sense to us in our human condition. Like having, like justice needs to be paid for, consequences and all of these things. But Jesus wasn't about that. Jesus showed us what it was like to be broken and to be seen and to be valued and to be known, but not feel condemned. I mean, think about like the woman at the well. I mean, I feel like that gets preached so wrong sometimes because Jesus didn't read her stories so that she would like feel bad about herself. He read her story because he wanted her to say, I see you and I value you. None of that stuff matters to me. Like, I'm not confused on who you are. I know who you are. You don't know who you are. And you've been looking for love in all the wrong places. And I'm here right now to show you that there's a new way to experience love. And that's who he encountered. Like, that's who she encountered. And she went into the town, and all these people that she had been hiding from, she's running and telling them about Jesus. Talk about transformation. That's
Hmm.
what I want to see in all of our hearts, that we would stop feeling like these parts of us that have to be hidden because they're evil and vile. Instead, let's bring them into the light and let's see the truth about it. They're really not evil
Hmm.
and vile. They're just primal. They're just they're just in survival mode. They're just doing the best they know how to do because they didn't get the right information from the beginning that
Mm,
you are good and Jesus loves you no matter what. And he wants to be in
mm,
it with you. Like he's not judging you according to your behaviors. He judges the heart. And the way he judges the heart is that you're pure, that you're lovely, that I chose you, that I made you, that I put all these great things in you. And I want to help you discover every single bit of it through relationship.
mm. You know, my pastor says this line like, um, again, I'm going to use the word sin because that's just sort of one of
And I get
the
what you're saying.
accessible.
It
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's an
yeah.
accessible word, and but he talks about a way to fill a legitimate need illegitimately, and I think that's actually valid because if we're talking about like child molestation,
Yeah.
rape, things like that, that there's evil to that behavior.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, there's a root system. Yes, there's sort of primal, but there's, you know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a legitimate need, even in the molester.
Mhm.
Skirt. Okay, let me just clarify really quickly. What I meant to say right there was the child molester, he's still a human. And they're behind all the brokenness underneath the act of that, or whoever's doing any crime, that just sounds crazy and horrendous to us. There is some sort of deep-seated legitimate need, whether that's just to be known, to be loved, etc., but it's coming out in an expression that is illegitimate, that is not right, that is not good, that is not healthy. So I wanted to just jump in and say that in case there was any sort of confusion there, because I know there's a lot of different thoughts coming through in this conversation. So thank you for being patient. Thank you just for being kind and considering. You don't have to agree with me or you don't have to agree with our guest, but you're simply listening and considering. And if you're just like, I'm out of this conversation, I honor that as well because you have full right, full choice to leave. But if you are considering and just listening, thank you for that. But also, I just wanted to clarify that line because when I was editing this right now, I was like, that might come off some kind of way. And so I wanted to be clear as other things are coming up to the surface in this conversation. Okay, carry on. But is fulfilling it in an illegitimate
Mhm.
way. And I feel like I loved what you said, Shauna, about bringing all of you to the light. Number one, the fact that Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman, he shouldn't be talking to a woman anyway, because the disciples are like, bro, what's going on? And so he already placed value on her because he's talking to her when she's trying to be hidden. And then he kind of shares, you know, all the things that blow her mind. But I think really what's standing out as you were sharing is not being afraid to bring all of you to the light of Christ, to the light of Jesus. And yeah, I feel like that actually is super, super powerful. And it sounds like that's some of the work that you get to do. And you have a partner um, with you that does these transformation sessions. Would you want to kind of give a little bit of a brief, like how y'all met, how y'all are doing this like together, which I think is really fascinating that you guys are doing this together? And then where are you located in the world? Because people are just like, there's someone that's listening to this conversation and is like, I think I'm curious about this. I just want to kind of explore. And so, where are you? How did you meet the partner that is with you in these transformation sessions? And just kind of give us a little bit of backstory on that.
Yeah, so we met in 2019. We actually met we were both on a journey of kind of a little bit of deconstruction and reconstruction happening. Um and we met at a training that was kind of in an inner healing space and really just connected, which was again another weird thing for me. That's not normally what happens. You know, we joke about, you know, I had walls up. That was my life, you know, and I would kind of let people in at, like through the window, just kind of say hi, but never anybody like got past the wall. And the joke is like all of a sudden she was like in my space and like, how'd you get in here? You know? So it was really a divine connection that the Lord created in us. We have a lot of things on our heart that's very
Mm,
similar, but we were at this space and we both, this first time we ever met, both looked at each other and said, you know, I'd really love to have a space like this because it was a healing center. where people could come and stay on property and experience the peace and awe of God and just have like some reprieve. And then we both had a heart to do retreats and to connect women together and to really create a healthy community for women to heal in, because so many of our connections are how we got broken, just with people. And so creating this space of community where people could come and heal and be peers and walk alongside each other. And so that was our heart. And fast forward, we just finished. So her and her husband bought a monastery in Canyon, Texas, which is in the panhandle of Texas. And it's fully remodeled. And we do retreats there. And we do all kinds of like events. We also have a ministry where once a month we host an encounter night where we lead people into an encounter, and you can actually check that always online on our Facebook page. It's usually located just right there on that page. And as far as like what we do all of the stuff for transformation sessions, we do them online. So we actually have a team. It's Susan and I who are the founders, and then we have a team that also support us and support our clients through the process. So if you wanted to check that out, if you want to learn more about us, our website is theundividedheart.com, and we have all of the information for everything that we do on there.
Undividedheart.com. Like big ups to getting a monastery
Yeah.
and having a retreat ground. I think that's fabulous. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's amazing. It's actually like on the rim of the Palo Duro Canyon, so that's the second largest canyon in the US, and it's gorgeous. And there's just a
Wow.
really incredible like healing like feeling energy that comes from that canyon. It's really amazing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of low-key jealous. I'm not gonna lie that y'all
You'll have to come see us.
No,
Come
for
check us
real.
out. We'd love
No,
it.
for real.
That'd
Oh
be
my gosh.
awesome.
Yeah, I just did a they kind of brand it as a festival, but I really consider it like a really beautiful wilderness retreat. And it was in Utah and just gorge. Everything about
I love Utah. It's gorgeous.
yeah, and that kind of speaks to, part of my heart as well, doing retreats, being out in nature, um, things like that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that you have that space. And I think, you're right. We as women, especially women in faith circles, need these safe spaces. And, I cultivate safe spaces digitally and also with smaller retreats. And you're doing the work. I meet other women that are doing this work throughout the nation, which I think is just really encouraging. And also, it kind of shows me too that how needed it is in our faith circles right now. I can't believe we only have a few more minutes left in this conversation.
I have loved this conversation, by the way.
Oh, yay! That's always my heart. Like, yeah, that's always my heart in these conversations. Number one, it's like for me, it's like I get to sit down and hear someone's story, and that just lights me up, like just regardless. And because of my history working in the entertainment industry and working backstage, I do that even backstage where I'm just asking, people, and that's me. And I've been in that field for almost 20 years, working with people that do not have the same faith traditions as I do,
Mhm.
or no faith traditions, at all. But we are usually both intrigued by each other's stories. And so, again, thank you just for sitting down with me. We didn't know each other, y'all, before this conversation. I mean, I could have been a crazy nut job. I kind of am a crazy nut job, but they know this. You didn't know this. But you could
Well,
have
I think that I kind of am too at times. Like if you really know the story of my life and like see that where I am today, there's got to be some crazy in that.
Listen. My audience is used to it. Like we're like, bring it. Okay, so this season I'm exploring this theme called heal, move, and dream. And I never know going into the conversation what's going to be highlighted to my spirit in terms of what out of those three words are going to really resonate. And heal just is like to me kind of the obvious word that has sprung up. Um, and you've been so gracious to share some of your healing journey how you help to facilitate healing. For those that are like, I don't know, maybe nervous about like starting healing, what might be something like on your heart to encourage someone that is just kind of nervous? Like they're, whether they work with you, whether they work with me, or someone that we both, you and I, don't even know, but there's a draw for them to like start to do the work. What might you encourage them with?
I think because I was nervous to be seen. That was the thing that was the scariest is when I'm seen, number one, am I going to like it? Am I going to like who I am? Because we've all created these versions of ourselves that are probably more like just acceptable. And so I would say, like, getting into that space where, and that's where I think that piece that I brought that I know is very controversial, um, that there's no bad in you. Inherently, there's no bad in you. I think even if you agree that there's a sin nature, you can see that that is through experience that create that. That's not in, it's not something that is your original signature. And so what we're getting to in healing is the original signature. Think about, like, I don't know where it is in scripture, but it's the Lord sings a song over you. We each have a frequency. We were created through voice, through the voice of God. Everything was created through the voice of God. We were created, we all have a signature, like frequency or sound. And so if your mindset is, I want to get back to that. I want to get back to who I was created as.
Mm,
And don't think about what you have to do to get there, because what you have to do to get there is always in our head way bigger than the process.
Oh, that's good.
And I'm sure with your healing modality, what you walk people through, it's very gentle and kind, and that's what I would say healing is, that it's something that is going to bring you into spaces of joy and freedom and love and abundance. It's not going to place more on you. And
Mm,
so as you move into these spaces where you're experiencing this, I want healing in this area, look for those things when you're looking for someone to work with. Like, what is their life like? What's their process like? And that's what I would move towards. I would move towards that process that feels free, that feels like I'm creating abundance and love, not where I feel like I'm having to change and mold and be constructed and yes, like do the behavior modification. That's what none of us are about that are true healers. We're about letting the truth of you, that authentic you, be seen. And that's the joy of healing is, wow, I wonder who I am. And if God loves me that much and he created me like that, I might like me too.
that part.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. You were referencing, I believe it's Zephaniah 3:17, talking about the Lord
Okay.
singing
Yeah.
over us, and that's one of my favorite scriptures as well. I'll put it in the show notes, y'all, so you can reference it if you feel led to. Wow, Shauna, this has been such a sweet and tender conversation, beautiful and raw and real, and you are always welcome here in our space. Um, I'm gonna leave
Thank
all
you.
the, you're welcome. I'm gonna leave all the links that you mentioned for your website. And then you can let me know which Instagram handle, all the things, like how people actually, if you wouldn't mind, if it's okay with you, could you share where people can find you in your work? I know you mentioned the website, but if there's any other places they can find you and Susan.
So we do have an Instagram. Our handle is the underscore undivided heart. And then it's the other one's just my name, Shanna Fougerousse. And I guess you can spell that out because it's not going to be what you think it is.
Ah, I love your last name, by the way. I think it's
Thank you.
incredible. Oh, it's incredible. All right. So this podcast is called Patrice's Playlist, mostly because I love music and I love play. but what's maybe a song? It does not need to be a Christian song, but what's a song that's maybe on repeat that you've just discovered that's on your playlist right now?
So I actually, for the last probably year, have been doing songs without words.
Hmm.
So one of my favorites is William Augusto. I have him on repeat all the time.
Good stuff. It's good stuff.
And so that's really where I'm at. And then every now and then when I want to have a little fun, I like some rap.
Yes, you heard it here
Because
first,
I
y'all.
love to move, and that's kind of what gets you moving. So I like
Yeah.
the R&B, I like the hip hop, and so that's a lot of fun for me.
Love it. Yeah, we loves the raps and the R&Bs here.
I'm in good company then.
Yeah, you've seen my Instagram page. You see what we be doing. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're gonna end this conversation and then we're just gonna have a little fun little deep dive for like a few more minutes for my private Patreon community. But I just want to say thank you to those that are watching this, whether you're watching on YouTube, wherever you're streaming it, wherever you're listening to it. Thanks so much for joining us in this conversation. Shanna, thank you again for being a part and trusting me to lead this conversation without knowing me at all. Is there anything else that you want to say in closing for this main conversation?
Yeah, first of all, I've had a great time, and I just learned to trust my discernment and intuition as I move forward into relationships, and you know, it never lets me down because it's connected to Holy Spirit and he never lets me down. So this has been a joy for me. And thank you for trusting me. You didn't know me at all. Of course, you didn't have to air this, so there was that safety. But I've had a blast, and I just want to honor you as a beautiful person that I'm so excited to be connecting with. And just hello to your audience. And hopefully, y'all found value in this. But I'm super grateful to have had this conversation. It blessed me immensely. So thank you so, so much.
All right. Thank you, Shauna. So bye, y'all. We'll see you on the next conversation. So, yeah, we really dove into the subject of healing. And it kind of makes sense, right? That we would go into that, especially because of the work that Shauna does and that I love doing, that I'm passionate about. And I really love creating safe spaces for women to do that. And so, speaking of safe spaces, I do an after party conversation. It's about roughly 10 minutes or so with Shauna. And I just have her share a little nugget about how she met her husband, how that plays out in terms of the healing work that she does and facilitates. And is he on board, or is he just kind of on the sidelines, or whatever that looks like for them? She's gracious enough to share the dynamics of her relationship and also sort of the origin story of how they met. And so if you're in my Patreon Bloom Circle community, which is a beautiful safe space that I'm cultivating, and it's private as well. There's a free tier and a little baby paid tier. You can, if you're on the paid tier, you can hear that little extra after party conversation. So I'm curious. What did you think of the conversation? What kind of, like, when you heard certain things, did it kind of like, did you feel certain things like in your body, just like, oh, that kind of hits me the wrong way, or that makes me feel a little peace and kind of makes my tension just kind of get relieved a little bit? Pay attention to those things when you're in conversations, and when you're listening to things, and when you're watching things on social media or scrolling on your phone, just so you're just aware. But I just want to encourage you, wherever you are in your healing journey, whether you're in the midst, whether you're being curious, I just want to encourage you that God is for you. And I think one of my takeaways from this conversation is that Jesus always has time for you. God always has time for you. And I just want to kind of sit with that for a moment. I think later on today, I'm going to go and just do like a bit of a nature walk and just kind of spend some time just being out in nature and with God, knowing that He always has time for me. And so I just pray that that flavors wherever you are in your healing journey. Yeah. So that's it for this conversation. I cannot wait to be with you on my next conversation. We're going to continue to explore this heal, move, and dream theme. And again, excited to invite and have old friends, new friends in this season. So let me know in the comments or in the reviews what you thought of this, regardless if you were a yes and amen or like a no and stank face. I love you and I am praying for you. And I pray God's blessing over you and your heart, your entire body, and your family. All right, my dears, my loves, my fam bam. I will see you on the next conversation.